It's another episode of the Next Fix podcast. I'm hyper excited. By the way, it's very early in the morning. But Audley and myself, right? Audley Stephenson, my new friend, my new spirit animal of the morning. He is here. He's ready to rock. And this is going to be great because his energy is off the charts. And
Great.
so he's a podcast host. He's got a book coming out this spring. His name, Audley, Audacious, right? This is the center of his brand and really who he is from what I know thus far. But Audley, I want to say thank you to you for waking up early this morning. How you living, man?
He's okay, man. Listen, first off, thank you for doing this. I'm a podcaster at heart. I have such a deep appreciation for the work that podcasters do. And unless you do it, you don't really fully understand it. It has to be a labor of love. It has to come from a genuine place of I want to do this. Because you're not like, for example, you're not getting up at 6:30 in the morning to do this. And look, I've been in this space since 2008, so I understand. And I will tell you that it's a labor of love. So thank you for making the space. Thank you for having the conversation. Thanks for letting me invade your territory a little bit. And I appreciate it, man.
Hey, man. Look, if you were close enough, I'd get you right in this closet. We would record this thing in the same damn room.
I love it. I love it.
Well, listen, oddly, you kind of before we hit record, you kind of started sharing a little bit because I had asked you, like maybe what your experience with substance abuse was and how did it affect you. And you started off by saying like, no, not really. And then you started kind of sharing about your mother, and that's a blessing. So anyway, let us know just a little bit about what your perception of substance abuse looked like in your journey.
Yeah, it's interesting because amongst my friends group that I grew up with, and I've got a circle of friends who've known me since I was 12 or 13 years old, and we're now all of us are 50 plus, and we're still some of us still hang out. We still I'm that guy that has never drank. I never drank. I never used substances. I never engaged in any of that stuff. I've lived relatively clean, and actually, it's interesting. You know, I think it's more a badge of honor for my friends. Yeah, he doesn't drink, and we'll go out and they'll tell me he doesn't drink. It's a big deal to them because I'm the one driving and picking them off the floor when they passed out, or peeling them off someone's girlfriend because they got in a fight in a club. Like that was me, right? And so I guess I couldn't afford to drink for their sake, right? But
Right.
it was never my reality. However, and I think part of it was I saw early on so that the impacts it can have. And so I started to share a little with my mother who we were probably 11, 12 years old when and I don't know when she started, but I remember she was a regular drinker. And many times, sort of I can remember instances sort of, passed on the couch, just kind of like, you know, incoherent, not what's going on, and give me another beer kind of thing. Okay, mom, here you go.
Mm.
And she found spirituality. Not that it was new to her. She grew up in the church, but it's kind of went her way and went the way of life, and found spirituality. And I always and while I don't remember the exact night that she sort of stopped, I do remember one morning kind of getting up, and she seemed just very different. I think over that night, she had some long, heart to heart conversations with God, and about life and wanting to turn herself around. And I'll always remember on the ceiling of our roof, she had written, and I don't know how she climbed up there. I don't know what to this day. I should ask her one day about that, how she got up there. But she wrote, rewrote my life. And it was literally written by hand, and M stands for mercy. So mercy rewrote my life. And she put that up there as a reminder as to sort of, her journey. And I think that was enough for me not to need to venture down that path. There wasn't any curiosity from my perspective. There wasn't anything. I never had a burning desire. And then also
Sure.
too, again, I joked about my friends. I kind of saw what it did to them, and that didn't appeal to me. I didn't appreciate the fact I woke up the next morning going, what did I do? Where did I go? Who did that didn't appeal
Yeah.
to me. And so
Well, I gotta say,
I was
oddly,
always
like
like, yeah,
I've been jealous of people like you. Like I had this like hidden envy of people that just like didn't bother to put themselves through it. because it's just nothing, man. There's like no real silver lining.
Like,
Maybe you have a couple of laughs. Maybe, you had like a bit of an adventure, but like at the end of the day, it doesn't do anything productive. And so what a blessing your mom had that night. What do they call, like, the night of the dark soul? Yeah, there's a term or phrase, but she had that, whatever it is, and it wasn't enough for her to get up on a ladder or whatever the hell she used, and she got up there, and you
no, right.
remember
You
you remember
motivated. I'm gonna have to give her a show and ask her how the heck she got up there because and I will say those words, it was on our ceiling for years. I remember you walk into the living room, you look up and you go, oh, still there. And it just became our norm. And whether that served as a reminder, whether that was just a signal or a sign, it was, like I said, it was enough for me not to. And the other thing too is I do remember year now this is, I'm talking about, 11, 12 years old, in my adulthood was I think I tasted beer once, and it didn't appeal to me. And
Right.
then and then there was another instance. I want to say I was at a friend's bachelor party. That's what it was, a bachelor party. And it was, oh, like, come on, let's take a shot of cognac. And I was like, ugh. And so I had some bad taste because I don't cognac don't taste good. I don't know what the desire is, the burning. I don't know what people like about it. But those two things were enough for me to say, nah, this is not for me.
Sure.
So yeah, I've
Well,
avoided my whole life.
all right, well, and I love how you said cognac. You clearly don't you're cognac.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like the way you said it is like very like it's like you the discontent was very clear in the way that you pronounced
I
it.
was disgusted.
Well, I wanna know, oddly, like, what did your journey to lead up to this book that you got coming out in spring, right? And it's Audacious Living, but I know I'm butchering a couple of words in there. What is the
The title is Living Your Best Audacious Life, How Unleashing Your Inner Greatness Can Change the World. That's the definitive title. And the journey to get there, I smile because and I think this is true for so many of us. It's just our regular life. Like, so I truly believe that our lives are made up by a series of events and experiences, and they direct and guide where we end up and what we do and the decisions that we make. And when you stop and kind of look back, and so they say life, when you live life forward, it's an art. But when you stop and look back, it's a science. So when you stop and look back, you can see how the dots all connected. So if I didn't make this decision, I couldn't go here, I couldn't go there, and I definitely wouldn't be where I'm at right now. And that's really a series of events that kind of took me there. And so I start with my mother. And I want to go back there because in my book, I think it's chapter 2, I talk about the roots of audacity. And one of the things I've come to the realization is those roots of audacity always were there. I just didn't see it. I didn't label it, I didn't recognize it, I didn't understand it, but it was always there. And my mother was very much, oh, look, she climbed up on the ladder to right on the ceiling. If that's not audacious, I don't know what is. But she was very much had that audacious spirit in her. And to this day, 83 years old, I remember once not too long ago, she said to me, my best days are ahead of me. At 83
Mhm.
years old, she said that. And I'm like, wow. And then that's how she lived her life. And she never silenced me. She never suggested that I be anything other than who I am. And she encouraged me as much as it drove her crazy. And I don't know if we have children, Ryan, but I will tell you, our children know all the buttons to push. They know exactly how to drive us crazy. But I will tell you this, and to all parents out there listening, I will say that thing that drives you absolutely crazy, if nurtured and mature, will be the leadership quality that people look to them to tomorrow for.
Well,
That
hold
will
on a
be
second. Hold on a second. You gotta say that again, but you gotta slow it down, brother. It's early. But no, that's gold. And I want you to just articulate.
so what happens is that thing. So, if you were a child that always questioned why, right? Well, when you mature and you develop and you enter the world, question becomes a very important skill. The ability to question, to look, to confront things. A child that was all, maybe a child was always whining, was always crying, right? Well, as they nurture, develop, they're in touch with their emotions, right? So,
Right.
so these are the things that other we look and go, oh man, that person, they're tremendous. leadership qualities. And so my message to parents, and I get it. I'm a father of three. They will drive you crazy. But please find a way to nurture that, to harness that, to allow, don't suppress it. Don't
Right.
suppress
So
it.
your mother did that to you with your audaciousness. And I kinda like, she like, it's the fact. You've got an odd name, right? And I'm
Well,
saying odd ODD, but it's oddly, like, audacious, but,
yeah.
like, I mean, I don't know, I have so many questions about it. I mean, what's behind it, right? And or was it just, like, embedded in you with this like, I don't
Well,
know, man. It's pretty
Well,
cool.
well, 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 again, I think it's a combination of things, and so I have this ceiling climbing woman that's just doing her thing, right? And she's like playing Spider. There's a reason why Spider-Man is my favorite Marvel character. I get it, like, right? But I also think it's important to tell the other side of the story, which is my father, because he also demonstrate when you talk about audacity at its purest form. But really interesting is I grew up without my father my entire life. My parents split up. I was 6 months old the last time he saw me. The next time he saw me, my eldest daughter was about 6 months old. She was just turning 6 months old. So my entire life, I had no recollection of this man. There were no pictures. There was no phone. Nothing. I knew nothing about him. However, my life was fine. Again, I had a mother that provided everything for me, so I didn't have this sense of lack. I didn't have this sense of missing. I was fine. And the only thing that I knew about my father is I carried his first name. He was Audley Senior. I'm Audley Junior. And that was it. And so, fast forward now, I'm a father myself. I get this random call out of the blue that "Hey, your father's looking for you." And when I think, and so we met, and we started to develop a relationship. Roughly about 4.5 years later, he passes away. He was very ill. So really, the backstory, he knew his mortality is coming. He knew what was happening to him in terms of illness wise, and he wanted to find his son. And how often do we and do we say, you know what, too much time has passed. Why bother? It doesn't make sense. He easily could have done that, but instead he said, "No, no, no. I need to find my son, and I need to meet him. I need him to understand." And so again, talk about audacity, because he had no idea how I would receive him. He had no idea, and we bumped early on. We had that rocky journey initially, but we eventually established a father son relationship. It was different, but still a relationship. And I always say that um, I appreciated so much from him, from his absence as well as his presence. From his absence, it taught me the kind of father I wanted to be. I wanted to be present. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be engaged with my children. I had for my children not to have a concept of who their father was or what drove him, what motivated him. I was going to make sure that wasn't the case. And so his absence, I learned that. But his presence also told me that it's never too late. You can always come back, right?
You are a monster for this ability I'm about to explain. You can extract positivity out of anything. And I think that is just a gift. What a blessing. I mean, and by the way, I didn't know my father. I knew of him, and I just reached out to him a month ago. I kid you
Oh,
not.
wow.
And I
Wow.
just published an episode
Good for
on this
you.
podcast with him. And he's also in recovery. And so he's been sober 13 years. And here I am doing a podcast and sharing
Yeah.
all of these stories of comeback stories, especially with substance abuse. And so to connect, it is a blessing. And for
Yeah.
you to recognize a positive element of his lack of presence, which I agree, because it's your choice. This is what
Right.
I see as a gift in you. You can choose to either see something as a catastrophe
Right.
or a gift from God and an opportunity. And that goes
Absolutely.
for every single thing, including your father not being around. It's
Sure.
wild, man. And
Yeah.
then you got to hold on to this, short chunk of time. But man, it's an amazing value that he decided to show you about your names and your nature, right? And bless you for not holding anything against him, because that's what I had to make a
Sure.
decision. Like, I can either choose to, like, come at my father and cast stones for what happened, in the past, or I can take advantage of this time
Yeah.
and get the
Yeah.
most value out of it for the future of the family. So,
Well,
yeah, man,
well,
good on him.
No, thank you, and congratulations you and your journey with your father. I think it's an important one. The thing about what really interesting when I think about that, him specifically, even when we met initially, he didn't start with, "Hey, I'm dying." It wasn't that at all. It was, "Hey, son, what's up?" And we had some because he want and what where we had some rocky roads a little bit, bumps in the road is he wanted to do all the father son stuff. Now he's like, "Hey, let's go to the Blue Jay baseball game." Well, my daughter, I want to stay home with her if you don't mind. Like that was, that, and so we kind of butted heads a little bit initially because he needed to understand what my focus was, and I kind of got him a little bit, but at no point was there like, hey, this is what's happening, and so I think what I really love about the decision I made is. So it would have been a very different story. It would have been a very different story if he showed up and said, "Hey, I'm sick. I'm dying. Let's establish a relationship." Because you almost compelled to, okay, I guess or maybe there's an obligation,
The
or maybe there's a
pressure.
guilt or something, right? But that's not what happened. In fact, he didn't reveal that probably a year and a half, almost 2 years later, is when he first said to me, "Hey," and I'm going, "Oh wow," because I didn't waste that time. We did not waste that time trying to figure each other out, know each other, and
Sure.
understand where I got my mannerisms from. And so I'm really proud about that story, and just kind of what it did for not only just myself, but even my children, and to get for them to for my daughter at that time, for her to meet her grandfather, right? So it's a big
Yeah.
deal.
It's awesome. And just to kind of shift gears a little bit here, tell me a little bit about like the bold framework, and maybe
Yeah.
some of these thoughts and some of the ideas that I can't wait to see in your book and like what you're going to bring to the world here.
I want to finish a bit of the story, the back and forth, and I will jump into bold because that's a very important aspect of what I've become, and again, it's helped me. Again, we talk about, so you look back and you connect the dots. It's been the bold certainly has done that, and so fast forward, I end up going through life. I'm living my life. Yeah, I met my father. He comes and he goes. I continue on. So I'm a basketball junkie. I'm a big basketball nut. Always had it. Always loved the sport. Never good enough to play at a high level, but still love the sport. And so, a buddy of mine, I know, so I started to work in. There's a sports channel here in Toronto called The Score. It was an all sports channel. So I decided I wanted to do an internship there because I wanted to be close to the sport. And in my mind, they saw me, they'd see me, they'd hire me, they'd put me on air. I talk about basketball, life would be good. I do
Yeah.
the internship there. Things are great. They love me. At the end of the term, they said, "Thank you so much," and it ended. I'm like, huh? Like, don't you want? Like, it didn't go the way I thought it would go. Right?
Ah,
Surprise, surprise. About a year after that, so the one thing that came out of the score that was very it was critical, integral, was a relationship I had formed with one of the on-air reporters. His name was Dave Mendonca. And Dave and I formed a relationship. And to put things in context, we're in Toronto, Canada. The Raptors hadn't won a championship yet. We're in a hockey country, but he and I are the only two diehard basketball
yeah.
fans on the planet. That's what it seemed like. So that was what our connection was. We established that relationship. I left this score. I went off to do a bunch of other stuff. He and I were reconnected about a year later on Facebook. "Hey, what's going on? What are you up to?" And I randomly mentioned, I heard of this thing called podcasting. Now, this is in 2008. Okay. So that's also in content. So we're like, huh? What's going on? Let's check it out. We started a podcast, and it was called the NBA Breakdown with Dave and Audley. And we ran for 5 years in total. It was a really cool experience because after the first season, we actually started to get like NBA players on the podcast, and we used to get
Oh wow.
celebrities. And, I remember interviewing Vivica Fox back in the day, or Jaleel White from Family Matters back in the day, um, and then we actually got media credentials. I always joke and say that we weren't the first podcast to get granted media access to the NBA locker room, but in Toronto, we're probably like the second one. And so now we're interviewing Kobe and LeBron and Carmelo Anthony, and there's Steph Marbury over there and Kevin Garnett, all these Hall of Famers, right? And like, wow. And I'm like, pinch me, like, is this real? So
Right. Right.
that podcast, it was in 2011. NBA was on a lockout, and so back then again, so a lockout happens now. There's lots of NBA content still because social media exposes everything. Back then, there was Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. That was the social media landscape. And so
Correct.
no social media content, I decided to turn to and just so happened there was a new league starting in Canada called NBL Canada. And so I'm like, hey, a pro league. You know what? I've been doing all this NBA stuff. Let me switch gears and work with NBL Canada. So I approached them and said, guess what? I'm an NBA podcaster. Let me do something for you. We started working together. That relationship ran about I mean, the first 5 years was fantastic, it was great, and it got even better because shortly after that, I was appointed the commissioner of the league. So there was a lot that happened between then and that started until became commissioner. A commissioner of this league, we're rolling, things are going nicely. We run into this thing called the pandemic. As we all know, the world stops. I'm going through this deep sort of state of like, huh? Like, what's going on? Depression. My story is no different than a lot of people. In that moment, and I remember being in a conversation with someone saying, ever since I lost basketball, and the moment I realized I didn't have basketball, I knew what the problem was. So I'm like, okay, so how do I correct this? What do I do to replace basketball? You know what? I'll get back into podcasting. I love podcasting. Right? This is what I want to do. And so I said to myself, but I want a podcast about something that really mattered and was something that was really important to me. And I'm taking a long way to get to this story here, long story to get here. But the point is this: I want to do something that was really intentional, that mattered to me. And I stopped to look back at my history and what I'd done up to that point. I could see that red thread of audacity. Every major success, every milestone, every victory, it was Audacious that allowed me to start an NBA podcast and be in locker rooms when no one else was. And that Audacity allowed me to be a commissioner of a basketball league. And there was no manual. I was doing it for the first time. Sometimes Audacity is stepping into things you know nothing about, but you're trying it anyways. And that's what led to the Audacious Living podcast, which are like 600 plus episodes later. The
Yeah.
piece within that process of developing and understanding, I landed on something called the B.O.L.D framework. And the B.O.L.D framework, it really helped me capture my journey and help me understand where I had gone to and what I had done. And the B.O.L.D framework is where it's an acronym, B-O-L-D. The first letter is better than yesterday. It's a concept of continuous improvement, right? So
Right.
Ryan, you climbed this mountain yesterday, and that was fantastic. And I'm celebrating with you, and I hope you did do, and I hope you're proud of yourself. And after you celebrate, get ready because there's a bigger one tomorrow you can climb. So there's always more that we can do. The O in that framework stands for outlast adversity. We are, and I hope this isn't a news flash for folks. And if it is, I want you to pay attention. We are going to have bad things happen to us in our lives. They're going to make us feel hurt, uncomfortable, disappointment, rejection, setback. That all of these things are going to happen at some point. It's outlasting those things and getting to the other side, because on the other side is where our greatness lies. The L in that framework is live your truth. It's really tied into authenticity. Be who you are. My mother encouraged me to be who I am to get to the point that I am now. Thing is disrupt the norm. Sometimes you've got to do things differently. It's going off that beaten path. The best analogy I use is the Wright brothers. Just imagine the crowd around them when they're trying to get a plane off the ground. We can't fly, flying for the birds. You guys are crazy. What are you doing? This is nuts. And now flying is a part of our existence. And so the B.O.L.D framework
Right.
essentially is to help you live your best audacious life. And I took a long, long story. I wanted to kind of
No,
frame
it's
it to understand it.
what you formed into a habit is courage, and it showed up so many different places for you. And then when I think about Audacity, like I feel like, and you most certainly have it, is a bit of a stage presence, right? Like when I think of Audacity, I think of it's like, one being courage and two to like step into the light, like
Right,
step out onto the stage and whatever that stage may be, whether it's in a locker room or whether it's in a podcast studio, whether it might be on an actual stage, but it does take courage to do all of
right.
those things
It does. It
and
does.
to do things that we don't know how to do. Like being a commissioner of a league, I don't even know. I don't have no idea like what that would what did
Right,
your day to day look like? Like it just I know it seems or it sounds important, but you know, it's just to see your courage and then you showing it so many times over time, right?
right,
It's just a gift that you're able to look back, connect the dots, and then help
right.
others to do the same. Because I feel like that is our responsibility. All of us, meaning all of humankind, is that if
Absolutely.
you're on a ladder, you look back and there's somebody on the same
Absolutely.
ladder, but they're a couple of rungs down. You've got to. It's our responsibility to say, "Hey, man, like check it out. This is what
Yeah.
do this and that." And that's what you're doing with this book and your podcast. Now,
Could I, Ryan? I want you made a really important point. I wanted to sort of circle back because I think it's really key. And you sort of talked about, a courage and step into that stage, wherever that is. I oftentimes remind individuals. So audacity sometimes it can be a misunderstood word. And I actually there's some myths around audacity, and some people think that if I'm not climbing Everest, I'm not being audacious. It's got to be big things, and it doesn't have to be. If I am coming out of my comfort zone, if I'm imagine sitting in a room of people and I'm speaking my opinion first from everyone else, right? That's audacious. That's
Mm.
audacious. If you have to set personal boundaries that you're in your life, we all have families and friends, and sometimes we have to separate and create boundaries for our own peace and well-being. That's audacious. There's a quiet courage that comes with that, and so I really want, one of the keys would like the people to understand is that audacity doesn't have to be these big grandiose things. You don't have to be skydiving or climbing a mountain or fighting alligators or anything like that to be considered audacious. It can be in the small, quiet acts as well too.
Yeah. And a quote like comes to mind by Carl Jung. He's a clinician, and he had said that people don't find God because they don't look low enough. And so that
Mm,
was really important to me in my recovery journey and still in my life. I
yeah,
find when I pay attention to the small things, and I don't necessarily mean details. I just mean like it's important to get some momentum or to commit to some
yes,
action.
yes,
However, the size of the action doesn't always matter as much as the action happening. Did I say that
yes.
right? Like
Mm,
it's
absolutely.
some
Yeah.
action is typically better than the
Yes.
perfect action, or and then my biggest fear is just waiting around. Like
Yes.
procrastination scares the hell out of me. And
Yes.
so I don't feel like you're a procrastinator. I just love there's a phrase that I saw, and it's fail forward. And
Yeah.
I want to know what you think about that phrase
Yeah.
because
The feel forward advantage is something I've become a real big fan of that I developed around understanding that failure is part of the process. And it's so much really tied into us reframing our thinking. Think of how many people are afraid to take that step forward because they're afraid they'll fail, right? And really, what I encourage individuals is simply say, okay, what if we put it on its head a little bit and said failing is a good thing? And instead of calling it failure, it's just there's an acronym first attempt in learning, right? And it makes sense because it already exists in our society. Scientists, they absolutely love experiments. They treat everything as an experiment because you can learn so much from that. And if you really think about it, I think so. I think so. First and foremost, I think we have to come to terms and accept the fact that if you're trying something for the very first time that you've never done before, chances are you're going to suck at it. Let's just put that out there. Let's put that out there. And I think if you accept that, you're like, okay, so, and not that we say, well, we don't try because absolutely you still make every attempt to try. You still try to, absolutely. But you have to understand that, you know what, I might not. But what do you take from that is the key. And truly, I really, really believe a failure isn't a failure until you walk away from the experience without the lesson. So it's so
true.
key that you pay attention to those lessons so you can use them for the next time. Because if you try something, again, you have one of two options. If you're one of the rare percentile of high achievers that nail it off the first try,
Right.
congratulations, good for you. I'd say a large vast of us, the majority of us, we're going to drop the ball, right?
Yeah.
And if you drop the ball, what happens? Well, you learn now what not to do. You learn what doesn't work, and you might even learn how to do it better. And so it's really the fail forward advantage is treating failure like an advantage, reframing in your mind, understanding that failure is part of the process, it's part of learning, it's part of developing and getting better.
Yeah, and what was it? First attempt in living? What was it?
Learning. First attempt in
Learning.
learning.
Living
Yeah.
works too, but, the first
Yeah, oh,
attempt
yeah.
in learning.
I might actually coin that one. Thank you. I'm gonna write that one down. First attempt in learning.
First attempt in learning,
Living.
and yeah, I'm a huge fan of that because I'll say if I'm talking to somebody and they're unsure or they're kind of lacking that confidence or they are procrastinating, and and I'll ask like, "Well, do you feel like maybe you could put this thing out there and nobody will buy it?" And then like, well, yeah, I mean, that would be easy. And I'm like, well, then let me encourage you just to do it, right? Just get it out there. Ernest Hemingway says your first draft will always be shit. And it's the truth. It is, and it's like, and so the quicker you do that first draft, now
Yes,
maybe you
get
don't
through it.
wanna maybe you don't
Yeah,
wanna go bring that to the publisher, but you once you have that, and
right.
then you start working towards crafting it,
That's right.
making it better, but they usually yeah, that first one's usually pretty rough.
And I would also say there's great value in community too. Let's also highlight the importance of community in anything that we do. Have your trusted circle, your friends, the confidants, whomever that can help you through that process. I really much come to learn that we have our own blind spots, right? And we can't
Mhm.
see what we can't see. And if we want to get better, we want to uh, you know progress, develop, whatever. Sometimes we need the outside perspective because they have the best vantage point of us, right? It's like if you want to get better, you can't. It's like painting a chair while you're sitting in it, right? You can't it's impossible. You got to get out of the chair, and it's people who can see the full chair in its entirety are able to say to you, yeah, you should. And so I do pay attention. Although there's a school mind in mind thinking, well, I'm not gonna let people divert from what I want to do. There's also part of my mind because I want to pay attention to what people say. I remember I was in a Home Depot. I don't know if I'm not trying to plug Home Depot here, but we're in Home Depot one day. Maybe I don't think they owe you a few cents for me plugging them or not, right? But nonetheless, Home Depot one day, I'm in a conversation with the cashier, and we were talking. I don't know what we are talking about. I was just rambling, and I wasn't a roll that day. Let's put it that way. And she turned to me, and this was like a year ago, by the way. She turned to me and said, "You know what? You should get into podcasting." And I said, "Oh, well, okay, thanks. I appreciate that. I've been doing it since 2008." But the point, though, is that individuals can see us better than we can sometimes see ourselves. And
Yeah.
when someone says to you, "Hey, you should do this or you should think about this," pay attention to it.
Yeah, yeah. I man, it is, to have that awareness is also, a gift, wherever it may be. Like, 'cause it could come from Home Depot, it could come from the gas station, it could come from your
Yeah,
church, it could come from, your partner, your kids, right? And so there's all these sources and all of these, opportunities all around us all the time. I guess, and this question is about the book, but
yeah.
and you just seem like a guy who's so filled with inspiration. What would you say is like the through line, right? What could people really
Oh man.
expect this coming spring?
Yeah. I think you really find it in the subtitle, like how your inner greatness can change the world. We all first and foremost, we all have an audacity inside of us, and there's a belief that it's only selected. And a couple myths, right? Another myth is that it's reserved for the selected few, the high achievers. If you're not a famous athlete, a CEO, or a famous speaker on the grand stage, or Tony Robbins type, then you're not audacious. And I'm here to say, well, no, we all are audacious, and it's just a matter of tapping into that. And use an analogy: if life is a racetrack and we're cars on the racetrack, audacity is our engine. Audacity is the engine in the car on that racetrack of life. And if you want another example, if you want an example of that, watch a baby learning how to walk.
Oh
Watch a
yeah,
baby learning how to walk. They're gonna get up. They're gonna wobble. They're not gonna get it right off the first shot. They might, but they're not. Chances are they're not. They're gonna stumble. They're gonna fall down, and they're gonna get back up again and then try again. That's audacity in action. I think what's happened is over a course of time, life wears us down, and I get it, right? Like we go through stuff, and I don't want to dishonor anyone's experiences. But well, get over that. It didn't matter. Yes, it mattered, and all I'm simply saying, it mattered. And in spite of that, I still want you to get up, right?
right.
And so get down in that valley, you hit that rock bottom, right? You rock bottom, hit that
Yeah,
rock bottom, and you need to understand that. And I will give you the grace and the space and the time to do what you need to do to get yourself out of. But do know you can't stay there. Take
right.
whatever time you need for yourself, and that's a very individual journey, right? However long, the and but however long I take is however long I take. But I think what happens is the quicker you bounce back, we talk about resiliency, right? A resilience factor it gets better and better. And so even for me, I got bad days. No, sorry, I have bad moments within days,
Mm,
right? They don't define my entire day. So if someone cuts me off first thing in the morning at 9 a.m. on the way to work, if I'm still groaning about 5 o'clock, there's something wrong, right?
yeah,
That's like I've had an entire day. And so that to me is really, really, really key. The other part, which ties into what you've done here with this podcast, is about sharing our stories. Cause that's how so first our inner greatness is understanding that we all have audacity inside of us, right? That's the
yeah,
inner great. The other part about it, and this is how you change the world. You change the world through sharing your story, what you're doing with this podcast. We're talking about our journeys. We're inspiring others. You know, it's so easy. It's so easy to think that when you're going through something, nobody on the planet has any
Yeah.
idea, concept, or understanding what you're going through. And imagine how uplifting that is for a moment when you hear someone go, yeah, yeah, you know what, man? That same thing happened to me last week, but here's what I did. It was done. I'm like, oh, well, and that changes things. And so I think there's so much power in sharing stories. I'll tell you a quick story. A friend of mine, she's a corporate accountant, right? Went to school, studied for years, corporate accountant, worked in the corporate sector. No, she achieved her mission, right? She's feeling good, or you think she was. Well, one day we were talking, she wasn't feeling fulfilled, didn't enjoy it, and didn't like it. And I'm like, okay, so what do you do? Like, what's the like? That's me. I'm jumping into. So what do we do, right? Like, that's like, what do you
Right.
do? Don't stay there where you're not happy. What do you want to do about it? And she said, well, you know, I heard a story. So she said, she proceeds to tell me, right? Because I've heard the story about a woman who also was a corporate accountant. And this woman also wasn't feeling fulfilled, wasn't feeling satisfied. So she made the audacious decision to leave the corporate sector to work in not for profit and small businesses. And now she has upliftment. She's feeling rewarded and satisfied, and she enjoys what she does. And I said, just stop for a second. Hold on a second. I want to let's put a pin in that for a moment, right? Listen to what you're telling me a story. First off, about someone you don't know. You don't know. You've heard of her story. You've never met her before, but you found inspiration in her journey, and it's inspired you to do the same. And just also think about it for a second. When she was making her decision, chances are she was probably scared too. She
Oh
was
yeah.
probably nervous. She was probably questioning herself and going, is this the right move? But she did it anyways. And that's why I say she made the audacious choice, because in spite of all those things, she did it anyways. And it was so impactful that and again, you don't know her, but you're telling me this story, and it's made a difference. But the way we inspire each other is sharing our stories.
Yeah.
We're talking about all the messy parts, and then we can make a difference to others, that the same way it did for my friend.
Yeah. No, this is amazing, man. And I know that you're sharing your story. Do you have a date? I know it just said the spring.
I don't have an exact date yet. I would encourage starting to connect with me. My website, bestaudaciouslife.com. I'm pretty active there, and also on social media with respect to giving regular updates. But yeah, spring is being targeted. Super excited. I really think. Well, first of all, it's a combination. What I love about the book, it's a combination of obviously some life lessons. So there's a story of my parents, are definitely in there for sure. Some learnings I've gained along the way, but then also too, because I've had the good fortune of having a podcast and sitting down with count hundreds and hundreds of guests, so many great insights I've gleaned from them that I've incorporated. So you'll actually see, oh, in episode 22 and episode 165, and episode 328, like literally I
Yeah.
quoted, not just quoting what they said, but quoting the episode, because that's what, there was so much that came from that. And I feel so uplifted and just, yeah, privileged
Yeah.
to have these conversations.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of conversations, and that
Yeah,
is, I mean, you know, I'm a new kid on the block compared to yourself, but yeah, these conversations matter, and it doesn't, you know, even aside from the production, but just the conversation. That's why I chose that word because it's
love it.
these exchanges, right? You know, regardless of the amount of listeners, just the
Right.
opportunity to have these talks is a real blessing, man.
Yeah.
I'm truly grateful that you organized it into a literary work, and so you know we'll
Thank
all
you.
be
Thank
looking
you.
forward
Thank
to
you.
that.
No,
But
I'm real
your
excited. Really, really excited.
bestaudaciouslife.com. That's the website, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it all. I'm gonna put it all in print for
Sure.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I'm pumped, man, and this has been one of the best mornings I've had in a long time.
Thank thank you for allowing me to be a part of your morning. I really do. Again, I take so much from the opportunity to share, to exchange, and also to learn, right? Because again, I had an opportunity to read a bit about your journey, and again, the rock bottom and what that means to you. And again, like first off, the audacity to share. It's big because you got
Yeah,
to be vulnerable, right? You would know this. You got to be vulnerable. You got to be open. You got to be accepting of all the parts of your story, because not all the parts of your story are good. Like
sure.
we wanna make ourselves to be the hero in our stories, right? In our minds, we're the heroes, but
Right.
sometimes we're not. Sometimes we're not,
Yeah.
right?
And then somebody will eventually come along and steal your thunder. You're gonna get you're gonna get somebody that doesn't really like what you're saying, but, like, you learn to get thick skin, and I'm glad you got it oddly. I almost called you audacious. It's like the word is now embedded. I bet you I'm gonna use it 5 to 10 times today.
I hope you do because I think it's catchy. And what's really funny, the last part of that piece I left out, part of the story, is that when I sort of look back and said, I want it to be audacious because that word is good to me. I didn't make any connection to my name. In fact, true story. I was doing an interview with a pod. It was my early interviews, and I said audacious Audley, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that kind of fits, right? Like it wasn't. People go, oh, you got a great marketing and PR team. You guys probably worked all night to figure that out, and how long it took you to couple, and it wasn't. And I think that speaks to just how meant to be it was because it was that natural.
Yep,
Right? I swear to you, I had no idea the connection was made. I just said the word audacious spoke to me in a really,
yeah.
really powerful way. Unknowing, unbeknownst to me, I not only was I named after it, I was living it my whole life and didn't even realize it until I did that reflective journey.
Hey, man, better late than never.
Absolutely. I hear you. I
Well,
hear you.
hey, listen, Oddly, thank you so much for your time. I
Thank
appreciate your
you.
energy. It is the best coffee I've had in a while, man. And so, yeah, everybody, keep an eye out for Audley's all of his work, his podcast, his book. I'm gonna make sure that there's links and some resources for everybody. But until
Sure.
the next episode, this has been The Next Fix.